It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today are two of my friends. Yes, Margo Speciale and Todd Stevens. And this is a really big show. And that, of course, pays reverence to the late, great Ed Sullivan. This is a show about two of our local filmmakers. Both Margo and Todd are in the process of making films. Todd, I think you're probably a little further in the process than Margo, but both of you are making films that should be of interest to a huge community. Todd, your film is called Crownsville Hospital, From Lunacy to Legacy. How long have you been working on that?
I started in the spring of 2013, so going on 4 years now.
And for those that don't know Margo, she is the granddaughter of Ed Sullivan, the reason why I just said this is a really big show. You are working on a film about your grandfather.
Yes.
And when did you start your film?
I started working on it last summer, so the summer of 2016.
Okay, so you are nearing the finishing point with yours, Todd. You are nowhere near the finishing point with yours.
Yeah, no, we are in pre-production right now.
It's both very exciting. Now, I know the impetus for your film, your grandfather, the legacy he left, which is amazing. For those that don't know Ed Sullivan, he was an American television personality, sports and entertainment reporter, longtime syndicated columnist, but best known as the creator and host of the television variety program Toast of the Town, which later eventually was renamed The Ed Sullivan Show. He introduced American TV audiences to numerous entertainers, Beatles, Elvis Presley among them. At a time where the United States was very racially divided, your grandfather's show was not.
That's correct, Donna. He had African-American performers on his show going back until vaudeville. What he cared about really was talent, and it didn't matter what your color, what your religion, what your race was. He just cared about talent, and he gave everyone a fair shot. That's kind of what his show was based on. The Toast of the Town, which was the best, whatever was the best in the town that week was on the show. So if it was a home run by Jackie Robinson was on the show, you know? So, yeah, I mean...
What an incredible legacy. So some of the interviews you've already done, I saw a photo of you with Mr. Belafonte.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, my grandfather was great friends, became very close with Harry Belafonte through the years. Harry Belafonte credits my grandfather for really kind of getting his name out there. He also credits my grandfather in that he was kind of a quiet force during that, civil rights movement with Martin Luther King. And my grandfather was not a crusader, yet he kind of took a quiet and deliberate stance to really have no biases.
You live in Annapolis, but you did not grow up in Annapolis.
I grew up in New York until I was 12 years old. The reason we were in New York, obviously, was the show was filmed from there. After my grandfather passed away, we moved to Beverly Hills, and my dad actually was the producer of the Ed Sullivan Show, and he continued to produce television variety specials, award shows in L.A. after my grandfather passed away.
To be brought up in this, do you remember meeting some of these celebrities other than your...
It's kind of all around you when you're growing up.
In Beverly Hills, right?
In Beverly Hills, you're going to school with the son of or the celebrities themselves. Yeah, it's just part of the culture.
You went to UCLA. Did you study film?
I studied sociology, and I also studied communications.
Todd, now, I don't know what the impetus was with your film. Your film, again, it's about Crownsville Hospital. For those that don't know, Crownsville Hospital is a former psychiatric hospital located just up the road in Crownsville, Maryland. It was in operation from 1911 to 2004. The facility was enabled by an act of the Maryland General Assembly on April 11th, 1910, as the Hospital for the Negro Insane of Maryland. It was specified that the facility should not be in Baltimore, and the land that it's on was purchased for the sum of $19,000. You're not from Maryland originally.
No.
You grew up in Germany. You
Yes.
went to film school in Ohio.
Correct.
You came to Maryland in 94. So what was your inspiration for a film about Crownsville Hospital?
Probably about half a dozen reasons. I guess it's in my backyard, for one thing. It's only 2 miles down the road from me, and I pass it quite often, and it just looks so sad with the bars in the windows and the glass that's broken and all the graffiti. So you have the crumbling buildings, which appeal to me. Also, my need to be creative. I haven't really done a project this large ever, mainly shorts. So I wanted to tackle it, and I thought it was maybe already done. When I researched it, I thought, I'm sure someone's made a film about this hospital already. And lo and behold, no one has. There was a young lady who tried. She was a nurse back in, I believe, 2008. And I contacted her, but she never finished. She saw a lot of interviews, but nothing came out of it. So her excuse, she said, was lack of funding. And it is quite expensive.
Those are great inspirations. When we come back, more with Margo and Todd. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm in the studio today with Margo Speciale and Todd Stevens. They're both of Annapolis, and they are both filmmakers. Margo is in the process of creating a documentary about her grandfather, Ed Sullivan, and Todd Stevens is the creator of Crownsville Hospital, From Lunacy to Legacy, which we've all been waiting for to come out. When is it going to be out?
Well, I try not to give a date because I have pushed it forward so many times. Originally, this film was supposed to be done in 2014, and it's now 2017. So I feel really bad for the Kickstarter backers. I had about 35 people back this project back in 2013, and I promised them a film in 2014.
But the artistic process and making films takes a long time, plus money. We were just talking about money, that it does take money to keep this thing going.
It does. I didn't realize exactly how much when I started. I should have asked for more in my Kickstarter campaign. I really only asked for about $2,800, and that was to get me a camera, a drone, and enough money to buy some stills. But since then, I've bought more equipment and more stills.
So ultimately, you would like to see the film?
I would like to see it done this year, hopefully this fall. That would be a good time, I think, as the summer ends and it gets colder, because the film will sort of have a chill to it. So I think it'll be perfect for the fall.
You have a new trailer out, by the way. For people that haven't seen that, they can go to the Facebook page or the website, right?
Facebook page. I haven't added it to the website yet, but I will.
Facebook page is Crownsville Hospital, From Lunacy to Legacy.
Yes, and I actually have 3 trailers, so this is the 3rd trailer. The first 2 were done about a little over a year ago. So this is the most current with the most current interviews. We
were talking about inspirations, and we were talking about money and keeping the project going. Your inspiration was your grandfather.
Yeah, it was a little known fact to me personally that he was such a trailblazer. And I'm the youngest of 5 grandchildren. My mom was my grandfather's only child. So I grew up knowing who my grandfather was. He died when I was 8 years old, but really kind of associating him with the Beatles and other acts that were on the show. But I really didn't understand the impact he had on the country. And it wasn't until about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that I read an article, and it said Ed Sullivan, civil rights trailblazer. And I picked it up and I was like, what? I read it, and it was crediting him with a lot of the things that we're exploring in our documentary. And I was so proud of him, and I wanted to know more. So I started digging into all this information, and I thought, wow, this is a story here. This is something I could tell in a documentary, which I've always wanted to do. So.
And do you have a time frame in mind when you think this might be done?
We're hoping in 2 to 3 years we'll have a final product.
And you have a partner in this. Let's hear about your partner, because she has an interesting history as well.
Yes, my co-producer, so there's 2 producers on the project. Her name is Suzanne Kay. Suzanne's mom is Diane Carroll, and Diane Carroll was on the show 9 times. So you have Ed Sullivan's granddaughter and Diane Carroll's daughter, one white and one black, doing this documentary together. And we kind of look at it from both sides, the side of the granddaughter versus the side of a black performer who was on the show.
Right. And for those that have not met your partner, she is beautiful, and you do immediately see the resemblance to her mother.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you all meet through the Annapolis Film Festival? And all of us, by the way, full disclosure, have all been involved with the Annapolis Film Festival.
I definitely met Suzanne there, and we hit it off right away because we had a lot of things in common. And she actually was one of the ones who encouraged me to do this project. She thought that it would really be something that people would enjoy.
All right, let's talk about what is involved with a project and what is involved with making a documentary and how crazy life can become, and if your families are still talking to you, especially you at this point, Todd. This is Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm in the studio today with Margo Speciale and Todd Stevens, both of Annapolis, and they're both filmmakers. Todd's working on a film about Crownsville Hospital, and Margo's working on one about her grandfather, Ed Sullivan. Do you have a title yet, by the way, for it?
Yes, we just came up with a title last week. It's going to be called Sullivision, the Ed Sullivan Story.
Nice.
And Sullivision is kind of a take on words, Sullivan and television.
Right.
And it was his vision that helped shape America.
Absolutely. He was a visionary in the broadcasting industry, TV broadcasting. So let's talk about if your families are still talking to you, because making a film is not the easiest thing to do, I would guess. And you are wearing blinders while you're making a film, I would guess. This is your project. This is your baby. Let's get it done. This is what you're focusing on.
It's true. You know, it comes and goes in waves, because if it was just something I was working on for 6 months, that would be different. But after 4 years, so you have moments where it's very active, especially when I needed to shoot the buildings at Crownsville. I needed to have some good weather and a plan. Yes, I try not to talk about the film anymore with my wife, because I talked about it so much for the first 2 years. And I would disappear on the weekends and shoot video and then return. So it's very time-consuming, but gratifying at the same time. And you almost don't want it to end, because it's like raising a child. You don't want it to leave and go to college or out to get a job, because it's gone. So it's a lot of fun, but it's difficult. Yeah. The whole process and all the stages that it goes through and you go through with the film. You know, the fear is that when you start the film 4 years ago, you have one idea, and the fear is that the idea is going to change because you're going to be a different person. So that's going to affect the film, but is it going to affect it in a good way or a bad way? And of course you're biased. So
It's a tragic story, yes?
Yes.
The story of the Crownsville Hospital.
I mean, it doesn't have to be. I'm focusing on the tragedy of the hospital, the dark side of the hospital.
A lot of these patients,
the legacy that it has.
The patients were put in Crownsville Hospital and were not necessarily treated wonderfully. Some were treated terribly, with even experimentation going on.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of them in the early days came out worse or didn't come out. They just were housed there. So it's so sad. I'm glad that we don't continue this, and that we've learned our lesson. But that's another reason that I'm making this film is just as a reminder, so that people don't forget that this happened in our history, and in Maryland history in particular.
It wasn't actually just Maryland, though. These hospitals, insane asylums, or state hospitals existed everywhere in the United States, with terrible treatment, with things that should not have been going on, overcrowded conditions. Yeah.
Right. This one was unique in that it was the only one in Maryland set up for the African Americans, for that population. Okay. When it was built, it was meant just for that segment, and it was like one of 4 in the country. So it was unique and rare in that aspect. And then it was desegregated in, I believe, 1962. You know, that's part of its history and its legacy, the fact that it was designed just for the black population.
Now, Margo, you're a mom. this is going to keep you busy.
Yeah.
Kids are still talking to you, or they don't want to hear any part of this?
No, they're actually super supportive of me. I think, I'm definitely very focused. I'm doing a lot more traveling than I had before, but my kids are older, and my youngest is now 15 and my oldest is 20. So I have a little bit more
leeway.
Time and flexibility. So it's a good time for me, actually.
Super.
Yeah.
Anything that I didn't cover that the website for your film, Margo?
It's www.mpslegacyproductions.com.
Okay.
And that's the Ed Sullivision website. And I also have a Facebook page. And I also just wanted to mention another thing, another part of our documentary that we're looking at, which is really important, is the impact of the media on race relations. So back when my grandfather's show was on the air in the late 40s, 50s, their viewership was something like 50 million people.
Wow.
So 50 million people were watching the same images at the same time. And it really helped. A little bit, we're getting a lot of stories from African Americans about how excited they'd get to see Black performers on the show. In fact, Oprah Winfrey has been quoted by saying that seeing the Supremes on my grandfather's show, especially Diana Ross, basically changed her life. And it gave her possibilities that she never thought she had before. She always wanted to be white.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she saw Diana Ross on the show that she wanted to be a Black woman, and she saw the possibilities. So that was, there's a lot of wonderful stories like that. And then we want to look at media today and how that is affecting race relations.
Right. Todd, did I cover everything? Did you have anything to add?
I wanted to say thank you to the interview subjects. I interviewed over 50 people that had worked at the hospital, and 4 of them had been patients there, and that was very brave of all of them to come forward.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because after I started diving into the film, I discovered that there's maybe a gag order in effect. A lot of people are afraid to talk about the hospital. Some had signed contracts with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in Baltimore, saying that they would not talk about Crownsville.
Wow.
One person even said he was afraid of losing his pension if he said anything negative about the hospital. And then another person said he was afraid of now getting fired. He already interviewed with me. He was one of my first subjects, and so now he's asking me to have him cut out of the film. So I really appreciate all of them, everyone that spoke with me.
Very good. Thank you both for joining me today. It's fascinating. Both are such fascinating topics.
Yeah.
I look
Thank you,
forward to
Donna.
seeing the movies.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much
yes.
for having us.
Yes, thank you.
This is Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.